That one, you great fool. It's the trolley.
Oh, of course.
Come on, Suze. Take control of the show there. Anyway, the trolley has trundled through. What do we grab from it for refreshment, please?
A nice alcohol-free beer today. It's called White Light. It's an IPA. I thought it'd be nice in the heat if you didn't want anything too strong. 0.5%. It's a classic IPA with a bit of a fruity, orangey pineapple taste. The brewery are specialised in just alcohol-free beers, so very exciting.
Excellent. What's it called again?
We Can Be Friends.
Okay, very good. Well, that sounds like very good. We'll have a half and get us through to the end of the show. Today's confession comes from Gladys. Good afternoon to you, Gladys. Brother Simon and the Confessional Collective. My confession arises from an event in 2010. More specifically, an occasion of celebration, namely my niece's wedding. My niece, for the purposes of this, let's call her Beverly, asked me to deliver the readings during the ceremony, and I was honoured to do so. In preparation for the big day, I bought a pretty pale blue dress, and, unusually for me, I decided to dress it up by finding a piece of suitably subtle headwear to complete the ensemble. I found a delicate fascinator made up by a collection of navy and charcoal coloured feathers.
Yeah, I know them well.
You know,
very good. Yeah.
Fascinator.
All over
Matt's
that.
got loads.
Okay, beautiful. So the wedding day arrived, and it was a moving experience, with the groom and best man looking dapper in morning suits and my niece looking radiant to beautiful. It makes it sound like a sliding scale. Sometimes she was radiant, sometimes she was beautiful in white, and my other niece looking beautiful as matron of honour. Isn't that a clumsy phrase, I always think? You want to be my matron of honour? No, thanks.
Anyway.
The wedding was being videoed, and the photographer and his assistant were darting around, clicking and recording all the details of the event, creating a record of the memories for us to look back on in the years to come. The wedding ceremony was officiated by a retired minister who was well known as a producer of religious broadcast services on Radio Ulster on Sunday morning. He was certainly the type of person accustomed to running a tight ship, as each broadcast of a Sunday service required a cool head and effective control of congregations who were unaccustomed to being on the radio. The time for me to give the readings came and went uneventfully, and the service moved to the point where the minister asked for the rings to pronounce a blessing upon them. Now, this is where you're about to realise what's going to go wrong.
Okay.
Now, one of the unique features of this wedding party was the best man, and he was a falconer. And
Here we go.
he had a snowy white owl that was trained when released to return to the owner's sleeve.
I'll bet.
The plan was that the beautiful, majestic owl would carry the wedding rings enclosed in a red velvet pouch from where another handler had been holding him in the gallery of the church. That is not what happened, Father Simon. It is safe to say instinct kicked in. The owl was duly released, and instead of alighting on his owner's sleeve as planned, the bird flew down into the body of the church towards his owner, but then swooped past the handler beyond the minister, who by now was raising his robe-clad arms in a self-defense stance, with his service book and demeanor now in complete disarray. I'll tell his reverence. The owl had not finished, though. You see, Father Simon, taken aback, I was surprised to see the owl flying straight towards me with talons outstretched in prey-snatching mode. There must be something in the saying, wise old owl, as I could see, as if in slow motion, the owl seemingly recognizing it had mistook the bundle of dark feathers on my fascinator atop my head. It was not some roadkill that it could have as its next nibble. So thankfully it swerved at the last moment and settled very briefly on the pew next to me before taking off again. Flying past the vicar, he was all a-tumble and he alighted on top of the organ. Time for the organist to try a few bars of All Things Bright and Beautiful, and we were off again. As it did a few laps of the church, the assembled congregation, family and friends were by now in fits of laughter, while the wedding party looked on in disbelief at the mayhem that had just happened. The best man finally retrieved the owl and the red velvet pouch with it containing the rings. the minister managed to compose himself and restore order, and the wedding service eventually drew to its happy completion. However, I obviously have to seek forgiveness from my niece and her husband and the minister for unintentionally throwing the key part of the wedding ceremony, which they had planned so carefully, into complete disarray because the owl thought my fascinator was roadkill.
Oh.
Until it didn't, and then it worked out what was happening. But, you are definitely asking for trouble if you have the rings to be delivered by a wild bird. Anyway, Sister Susie's going to speak first on this one.
Well, yeah, I do think it's slightly... You just don't know what they're going to do, do they? What do they say? Don't work with children and animals. And I think, there's a reason for that, really. And, the fascinators I also don't really understand, but I'm sure it looked lovely and it didn't look like roadkill at all, but it obviously confused the owl.
It did.
And I'm not really sure what she did though here, Gladys, because it wasn't her fault really, and I'm feeling quite kind today, so I'm going to forgive.
Brother Matthew, what do you
Yes,
say?
definitely going to forgive. As Susie points out, it's not Gladys's fault. She's wearing the fascinator. Not everyone's choice, but she has to go to a wedding with a fascinator.
But it is her fault.
It's definitely not her fault. It's the fault of the best man, making it all about him. Typical falconer, with thinking the world revolves around you and your owl. Why do you
typical?
keep it? Yes, yeah, they're all like that in my experience. So keep it in your pocket next time, sunshine. Rather than
in your pocket?
the
owl?
the owl. No, the thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
And my point exactly.
Yes.
So once again, I'm right, and for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
It's that logic that
Yes.
makes you the star that you
It
are
is
today.
quite right.
I've got no idea what he was saying. However, do you forgive Gladys for wearing the fascinator and spoiling an entire wedding service by distracting the owl? Because that's what happened. Anyways, the people's very pleased for Gladys. Do you forgive? Yes or no? 61054. Just before the news, we had a little rather fabulous confession from Gladys with her fascinator at a wedding where the rings were supposed to be delivered by an owl, which then got distracted, causing chaos, and it was sitcom land all over again. The people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Not forgiven, says Shelley in Manchester. I have never seen the point in a fascinator at a wedding. They're large, completely obscure the view to everyone behind them. What is the point? Karen, on her way home from work, though, says, forgiven. Gladys did nothing wrong. The wedding party should have told the congregation they were using an owl and not to wear anything resembling a bird's lunch.
True.
It's the best man's fault. I don't forgive him. And Gary in Leeds says, totally forgiving. Owls of laughter broke out in our house.
Okay, I can see how that would. Yes, I know. I got it first time, actually. Your confession, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. We need a little bit of refreshment after the exhaustion of singing along to all these hit songs. What have you chosen for us today, Suze? What lovely beverage have we got?
Well, I've gone for a big jug of Pimm's and lemonade with lots of strawberries, mint, orange. Delicious.
Very good. I'll just have a glass of water, please, until the end of the show.
That's good of
Matt
you.
can have the jug.
Yeah, I'll just have that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Today's confession comes from Rog in deepest France. Simon, Matt, Susie and the rest of the team. This tale relates to an event from back in the winter of 2005-2006. It's just one of the many moments from one of the many charity banger rallies that head out across and around the Sahara to the Gambia in West Africa. Takes 2 days. It takes 21 days. Sorry, just missed out the one. Takes 21 days, roughly, to finish the 4,400 miles through France, Spain, Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Senegal, all in an unsuitable non-ULEZ compliant car. I have since repeated the exercise 7 more times. Nothing compares to this one, the first. Someone assaulting the cars with a tub of pink paint, that was fun. A huge live crab secreted on the back seat of another, that was fun. But just a minor prank in comparison. This time, the 200 cars that left Dover separated into smaller groups. Our car had made it as far as a hotel in Marrakesh and made an interesting sight in the car park, with clouds of steam and smoke emanating from many of the vehicles. Any clapped-out car you can think of was represented by our team. Some of the other hotel guests were driving huge, swanky, expensive 4x4s. They were resplendent in their Dakar regalia. Hello. These were the swanky show-off guys who clearly thought they were in a Mad Max film. Leathers, chains, tattoos, growls, and the smell of petrol everywhere. Just your kind of person, Matt, really.
Chains.
Next morning at breakfast, we found a magnificent buffet, including a large bowl of hard-boiled eggs in the dining room. When the Dakar group arrived, they all made their choices and sat at a long table, sniffing derisively at us in the banger group. They growled, compared tattoos, sniffed each other for petrol.
What?
There was, in my imagination, Toe Cutter, Mudguts and Warrior Woman, and all their friends. There they were, all lined up. And then, as one, they picked up their hard-boiled eggs and, with noisy, merry aplomb, cracked the eggs against their foreheads before peeling them.
What?
Then, after a day of sightseeing in the city, we happened upon a market stall that sold fresh eggs. And a thought occurred. Next morning, during an early breakfast, the top layer of the hard-boiled eggs bowl was mysteriously replaced with fresh eggs from the souk. The preposterous Dakars subsequently arrived and repeated the previous day's routine. Toe Cutter, Mudguts and Warrior Woman all picked up their eggs and headbutted them at the same time. Well, Father Simon, mayhem ensued. Smashed shell, runny yolk and glutinous egg white went everywhere. Ears, eyes, mouths, then running all over their designer-made, ripped Mad Max-style clothing. Looking back on it, I'm sure Toe Cutter, Mudguts and Warrior Woman were actually called Sebastian, Jeremy and Pippi Longstocking because all is fair in the desert, especially if your opponents are wearing tactical vests, holsters and headdresses to go with their Versace leather jeans.
Ugh.
For the record, the following day, all the hard-boiled eggs had been ready peeled by the chefs. I think if they happen to be listening, an apology is owed to only the hotel cleaning staff. I have no idea who was responsible for this jest. Honestly, I think forgiveness from prank-hating Susie is unlikely, but in the realms of national pride, others may side with the bangers. Best regards, Rog, who is already in deepest France, just in case it doesn't go his way. Prank-hating Susie, what do you say to Rog in deepest France?
Well, yeah, Roger's right. I don't like a prank. And, you know, just because they were doing something silly doesn't mean you need to make it even sillier by replacing it with, you know, raw eggs. So that
they do sound ludicrous, these Dakar types.
Cleaning that up. Can you imagine feeling the egg white go down in your ear? No, thank you. And Roger's like, right, I do like a prank, and I'm not going to forgive him.
Okay, well, that went as expected. Brother Matthew.
I'm pretty sure I speak for the nation when I say I'm going to forgive because of the posh boys with their eggs, and they've got all the gear and no idea, and they're all staying in nice hotels, and yet they're still wearing their leather and chain. Why are they wearing chains? Chains doesn't make any sense. Don't need that in the car. It's only going to get very hot.
Because it's a Mad Max thing.
It is a Mad Max thing, but still don't need any chains. Yes, and they should have checked the eggs. Check the eggs before you crack it on your head. That is my rule of thumb. Got me through many a buffet. Right? So yes, for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
If you're going for a buffet, always remember your tactical vest, holster and headdresses.
Obviously.
Always very important.
Check the eggs.
Okay, and check the eggs, obviously. So the people's verdict, please, for Rog in deepest France. Does he have your forgiveness? Yes or no? 61054. Just before the news, a confession from Rog in deepest France, a tale from a rally which went to the Gambia in West Africa. He was one of the banger crowd, and he was hanging out, well, trying to avoid the Dakar crowd, who were a little bit mudguts, also a little bit Pippi Longstocking.
And posh.
And also a lot of egg all over their faces. People's verdict is in. Here we go.
So Dutchy, the bearded trucker in Leicester, says, absolutely not forgiven. Have you smelled egg rotting? And to have to sit in it through a hot day's rally is unforgivable. But Dino in North Cave near Hull says, not forgiven. Complete lack of ambition. Should have left the eggs on the parcel shelf in the sun before putting them out. Go big or go home. And Tim from Sutton Coldfield says, easily forgiven this one. Brilliant confession. I guess the yolk was on there.
It's funny how that always appeals to you.
Yeah, I do like that one, yeah.
Your confession, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, that's now the side of the drinks trolley, which is a very, very lovely thing, because it means it's confession time, plus refreshment from Suze. What have you selected today from your top pub selection?
I have selected a gin and tonic, but in particular I've gone for Aviation Gin, which is co-owned by Ryan Reynolds, who also co-owns Wrexham Football Club. So that's why I've selected it.
Very good.
He doesn't need the support, but if it's a good gin, then...
No, he doesn't.
Why not?
But it is actually a good gin, actually. I wouldn't just say it because it is tasty.
Today's confession comes from Nigel. Thank you, Nige. And it's one, and it does say at the beginning, you might as well use the real name of the school. However, we have decided not to.
Oh, right. Good idea.
Okay.
Which is why it goes like this. Father Sam and Brother Matt and the Sisters of Solitary Confinement. The recent bout of school prize-giving confessions reminded me of an event that took place 25 years ago and for which I have never sought forgiveness. I attended a secondary school which was named St Custard's.
Okay.
Now,
yes.
Back in the day, I have to say, St Custard's had ideas above its station. It actually had a picture of the original St Custard in the corridor that we bowed to as we walked past. Think royalty.
Okay.
And the staff liked to remind us of its famous former pupils. A list of 3 consisting of an actor from LOLO, a Yorkshire and England cricketer, and a journalist who wrote about beer. I hope that's vague enough.
Yes.
Whenever this list was recited in school assemblies, myself and my partner in crime, the future Reverend Gherkin, not his real name, would nod at each other and mutter, Jesus came to this school, you know. So the headmaster liked to tell us that St Custard's was no bog standard comprehensive, and on one occasion, in a moment of mania, he even announced that it was the best school in the world. Father Simon, it was 14th in the Council League table. Perhaps the most pretentious aspect of this very bog-standard comprehensive school was that it had a school song with a chorus in Latin, which went, Floreat Scholar, Floreat Scholar, Floreat Scholar, Armand Berensis. A call for the good people of the village in which the school was located to allow scholarship to flourish. Perhaps some of the teachers could have taken this to heart. As many schools did, we had annual prize-giving ceremonies. In keeping with the school's pretentious nature, they took place in the town hall and usually involved a very long and very boring speech from some dignitary. The best year was when the aforementioned cricketer was invited to speak, and when the time came for his speech, we pupils sat on stage staring out at the audience in front of us, got comfy and prepared to endure the usual dull tales meant to inspire. The cricketer stood up, thanked the school for the invitation and the gift he'd been given, and then said, "Nice one," and sat down again.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Resulting in 2 panicked teachers jumping up to switch on the tea urn 30 minutes earlier than expected. We loved him for this and thought it was the best speech ever, but he was never invited back. The Speaker of the Year for which I seek absolution was an MP who represented one of the local constituencies but lived 200 miles away. He droned on and on about who knows what, and even some of the teachers were beginning to drift off. It was during this speech that I and the Reverend Gherkin quietly hatched a plan. As the MP finally sat down and the parents in attendance dutifully clapped themselves awake, the organ gave the first notes of Floreat Scholar, Armand Berensis. We pupils took to our feet, unenthusiastically intoned the words of the first verse, and when we reached the chorus, the Reverend Gherkin and I gave it our very best. We sang, "Flog me a Skoda, flog me a Skoda, flog me a Skoda" at half the price. When the second chorus rolled around, a few of our fellow pupils in the immediate vicinity joined in with our version. At the third chorus, many more were singing the remix. By the fourth, there were a few obvious titters in the audience, and some of the teachers in front of us were glancing warningly at the cast of once unwilling, now very enthusiastic singers. By the end, everyone on stage, and many parents too, were imploring the town hall to sell them a cheap motor. Father Simon, I don't seek forgiveness from the visibly raging headmaster. That year's performance of the school song was the most rousing I heard during my 5 years there, or from the clearly confused MP, who spoke for 25 minutes more than his allotted half hour, thus forcing us to hatch a plan as a means of keeping ourselves awake. I don't seek forgiveness from those receiving their awards that year, as the memory we gave them was far better than the photocopied certificate and book of insipid poetry handed over on stage. I do, however, seek forgiveness from Mrs. T, our long-suffering form tutor, who undoubtedly knew that we were the instigators of this performance, but she never said a word. She has long since retired, and this secret has no doubt burdened her for over a quarter of a century. It is high time that she was delivered and relieved of that burden. Yours, Nigel. Well, it's I always like to have speech day confessions like this, particularly if there's a school song, because nobody needs a school song anymore. Floriat Scolar, Flog Me a Skoda. What do you say, Sister Susie?
Oh, I really like this, Nige. I think, it's a bit harmless. It was a while ago. You were a child, and if that MP is talking for that long, then surely you're going to need something else to do as a teenager, and I think that's a fabulous use of time. And I don't know, maybe it's the heat, or maybe Matt's rubbing off on me, but I'm going to forgive.
Yeah. Or maybe it's the gin, which was
could be that.
I haven't had any yet.
Oh, okay. Of course, no, we're all working. Matthew, what do you say?
I'm going to forgive. Like you, I instinctively distrust schools where they're singing in Latin. Why are you singing in Latin? That makes no sense. You're 14th in the league table. You should be concentrating more on what you're teaching rather than singing in Latin. So, yes, I'm definitely going to forgive. And my instinct is that Mrs. T loved it as well. Couldn't say it at the time. Obviously, very professional. That's what Mrs. T strikes me as. But once she retired, she would regale everyone with the story about the selling me a Skoda. So, yes, I am definitely going to forgive.
My guess is if you went to a school and that was the school song, you'll know precisely where we're talking about, I would think. Anyway, it's the People's Verdict, please. For Nige, what do you say on the People's Verdict? 61054, first word is Simon. Forgiveness or not? Just before the news, we had a confession from Nigel, another St Custard's confession. It's a speech day confession, boring MP and everything, but a school song, Floriat Scolar Almond Buriensis, which was changed to Flog Me a Skoda at half the price. Everyone joined in. Their teacher got slightly mad. The People's Verdict is in. Here we go.
Everyone forgiving tonight. Michaela in Bury St Edmunds says, forgiven. School speech days are so boring. The speeches go on far too long, and they're always from the most boring and talentless individuals. Them changing the lyrics to the school song sounds completely justified.
Michaela has suffered, I think, in the past.
I think so. Tom, driving to Winchester, says, I have to forgive this. Taking the mickey out of school songs is exactly what they're for. Matt is right. What is the point in singing in Latin? Who are you trying to impress? And Chris from Harrogate says, yes, I forgive. Who needs to listen to the drivel of a politician anyway?
Okay, a little harsh. Anyway, thank you for the verdicts, and send your confessions, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's time that we had a drinks trolley of some kind to just assist us as we concentrate on tonight's confession. What are you offering us today, Suze?
Well, I thought what would be very nice is a very tall glass of orange juice topped up with soda.
Okay, that's
orange
good.
juice and soda.
Okay.
Delicious. Or you could just have soda with lime.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
That's also good.
Okay. What would you like, Matt?
That and a gin.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought so.
Yes.
How did we
Drink
guess?
responsibly.
Today's confession, which I called Good Heavens, Miss Sakamoto, You're Beautiful, is obviously a reference to She Blinded Me with Science by Thomas Dolby. And you will see why that is relevant as we proceed through this story from Huggy Bear. So today's confession is from Huggy Bear. Dear Simon, Matt and the Confessional Collective, I would like to humbly step forward and unburden myself of a scientific sin committed many years ago, back when I was an 18-year-old student sitting my science baccalaureate in Luxembourg. I think we've had one other confession from Luxembourg, but this is number 2.
Yeah.
As part of the practical exam, we were required to prepare a Petri dish, pour in a gel, cut precise little wells into it, and then carefully pipette in various solutions to observe their reactions. I was doing surprisingly well. The gel was set, the cuts were neat, and I was feeling quietly confident and rather proud of myself. That was until disaster struck. As I leant over to fill the final hole with solution, my hand suddenly twitched, a rogue spasm of doom, and I squeezed far too hard. Solution overflowed, spilling out of the final well and contaminating all of the others. What had moments before been a pristine Petri dish of perfection was now a runny mess of cross-contaminated chaos. So that's a pristine Petri dish of perfection turning into a cross-contaminated piece of chaos. A little bit of alliteration on the way there.
Yeah.
Huggy Bear says I froze, knowing this experiment accounted for a significant chunk of my final grade, and I was done for. But then an opportunity presented itself. The examiner, a stern woman, with all the presence of Paul Hollywood mid-scon inspection, was making her rounds.
Excellent.
I had moved faster than my classmates, so she reached my station while others were still cutting holes in their gels. Fully expecting me to be at the same stage as my peers, she picked up my dish to check if the gel had set, tilting it ever so slightly. This was my chance. With all the mock horror and acting skills I could muster, I gasped, "Mais non! Quelle horreur! Madame la professeure, qu'avez-vous fait?" Oh dear, the horror.
Oh, because we're in Luxembourg. I was wondering
Yes.
what was going on there. Yeah.
I'm not just speaking French randomly.
Okay, no, it makes sense. Yeah.
What have you done, Madame la Professeure?
Yeah.
And I looked at her as if she had just drop-kicked my future into oblivion. Tu l'as ruiné. We're still in Luxembourg.
Yeah, we are.
You've ruined it, I said,
Yeah,
looking at her wide-eyed as though she had tragically mixed all my perfectly placed solutions. Tout est perdu. All is lost. Ma vie est finie. My life is over. Drama queen or
Wow.
what? Well, Madame la Professeure looked horrified. She apologized profusely, taking all the blame for the failure of my experiment, trying to fix and make things better. She told me I would not be judged beyond that point. Mais non, tout ira bien. You'll be fine, she says. And that, Father Simon, is how I managed to turn my own clumsy science catastrophe into someone else's fault. I passed the exam and have carried the guilt in my pipetting hand ever since. Rest assured that I have not touched or gone near a lab or lab equipment ever since, and moved my career into an entirely different field. I now place this confession before you, hoping for absolution or at least a slightly tilted verdict. Yours in sin and in science, Huggy Bear. Brackets, not my real name.
Oh, amazing.
There you go.
Nice.
Okay, well, there is a lot of ingenuity here. So Huggy Bear, clearly it's his own fault. And then because the situation presented himself, he made Madame la Professeure take all the blame. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Yeah, very clever, Huggy Bear, but essentially, you'd be quite good on the drama, I feel, because overacting, oh my goodness.
Tu as ruiné!
Exactly. And just for that reason alone, I can't forgive you.
I think there's a little bit of a beret wearing.
There is, isn't there? I like it.
From Huggy Bear. What do you say, Matthew?
So I'm going to forgive because really it's quite straightforward, this one. Whose fault is this? It's Madame la Professeur's fault because she's the one picking up the Petri dish when she should have checked before she picked it up. Don't be going willy-nilly with your Petri dishes. That's what they teach you in chemistry school. Yeah. So she should have looked and she didn't look, and so it's all down to you, Madame la Professeure. So
Yes.
for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
I'm glad you remembered that we were in Luxembourg.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the whole thing
Made
would have
no
been
sense.
very, very
Yeah,
strange.
none at all.
So it's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Huggy Bear? Yes or no? It's the people's verdict. 61054. And the first word has to be Simon. I just have to lean over to press this button.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Just before the news, a confession from Huggy Bear about a science baccalaureate exam in Luxembourg when a rogue spasm of doom meant that he ruined his project. However, he managed to pass the blame on to Madame la Professeure. The people's verdict is in.
So John in Wadebridge says, not forgiven. I can't believe he passed a science exam by using his acting skills. Ridiculous. But Michaela in Cardiff says, forgiven. I'd have done exactly the same. Mistakes happen. I think Huggy Bear did well to come up with all of that on the spot. And Joshua in Lowestoft says, forgiven. Hey, Simon, Matt, Holly and Susie. Totally forgiving tonight's confession. Wasn't everyone in the end all happy and no harm was done? Lol. Loving Cash for Kids Day. Keep up the good work.
Wow, that sounds like a 10 out of 10 reply. Thank you very much for the verdicts and thank you for the confessions. You can send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.